Today we have an awesome guest, Carter Dillard, Policy Director and Board Member of the Fair Start Movement in San Francisco, founder of HavingKids.org, and author of Justice as a Fair Start in Life. Really, this is just a couple of the things this fella has done and accomplished. He used to work for the federal government, didn't like what he saw, and decided to advocate for the whole damn world. Instead, he supports all sorts of great causes, from wildlife protection to advocating for smaller, more sustainable families, and was our greatest supporter during our awareness ride across the country. We're glad to have him, and thank you all for coming.
I tell myself that it was one time only, but the craving claws at me every time I'm lonely. Parents shouldn't bury their children, I keep going, but this road ends somewhere, I just hope that they know me. We all got some things that we're going through. Stop living in the day it all broke you. We all got some things that we're going through. Demons chase the brave and they chose you. You don't know my life for anything that I'm about. I was left for dead, counted out, so I'm out. Standing in the streets, tears running down my cheeks. I'm starving, need to eat, but I'm chasing down this dream. Used to sleep in the trap house, trying to take the rap route, stay up.
Carter is a very busy guy, so forgive the audio, but we had to do the interview while he was sitting at the train station.
All right, so today we are here with Carter Dillard, and I actually read today that you used to be law enforcement that kind of went rogue and started activism instead. Green Pill podcast, I think I heard that on.
True, that is true. Yeah, I used to work with Department of Justice, Homeland Security, but I felt like they were defending. There were better examples of justice out there in the world. Lawyers could spend their time defending, so I wanted to find those and kind of jump in.
Right. I wanted to ask you, because we've kind of been talking off and on for a little bit. I was on your website today, or Fair Start website, and just catching up on some of the things that you guys do and stuff like that. And I'm always particularly concerned with the child abuse and prevention aspect in activism. So tell me a little bit about what you know as far as the statistics go for child abuse, CPS responses, and things like that, if you know anything, just off the top.
Yeah, I mean, we cite quite a few statistics on our site, but children are killed almost every day around the world by parents, caregivers, people that they trust. You can quintuple that number if you want to count just cases of abuse and neglect that don't result in fatality. And yet there's really no system in the world designed to prevent children from being born into the conditions where that's likely. Even, people might immediately start to think of China's one-shot policy and say, well, look, of course here's an example where the state intervened, but no, that had nothing necessarily to do with preventing child abuse, nor did it succeed in preventing child abuse. It was meant to handle what the state considered to be a risk to food security and other caring capacities. It was primarily a collective issue. So I think the question we have, Chris, is what we can do to prevent fatalities and abuse and neglect. Tens of thousands of cases, and if you go globally, it's millions of cases that you see annually.
Right. And one of the things that we agree on with you is the how did he phrase it? Kind of the education before parenthood aspect of what you guys do, trying to prevent numerous or extremely large families. Your opinion on that, as far as the income brackets go in society. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think right now, if people set out to have children, or they get in a position where there's an unintended pregnancy, the thought process doesn't really involve what the collective society owes the future children they might have. They're just thinking, oh, I'm on this alone. There's no one here who would be here to help me. But we all have a collective interest in investing in children. And because they are the ones, their development really accounts for how we experience the world around us, right? The people around us, whether they got what they needed growing up. So it's a disconnect. We feel isolated in the decision about having children. It's just up to us, whatever we can offer our child. But it really, since it determines the quality of our lives, because the people around us determine the quality of our lives, we shouldn't feel that way. We should feel like there's a collective interest in investing in children, making sure that at least they have some minimum level of welfare at birth, and ideally that they have equal opportunities. So I think, to your point, Chris, that financially we would be thinking that my child, if I choose to have a child or I choose to continue to carry an unintended pregnancy to term, the goal would be, how can the community ensure this child gets a fair start? And if we were thinking that way, instead of thinking in terms of, well, we're in this alone, we're isolated, if we thought about it a little more collectively, I think people would be empowered to make better decisions, and kids would be empowered towards something like true equality of opportunity, instead of rich kids getting massive trust funds and poor kids, the worst off, ending up in a foster to prison pipeline. So a lot of the work you do has shown the state is really double dipping. They are getting the benefit of growth because people are not, we're not investing in kids. And at the same time, they then get to come in and pretend to be superheroes by breaking up families after they didn't invest in them, didn't plan for them, breaking up and harming families and children after the fact, and often touting their own, great deeds at having intervened in the case of child abuse or neglect or child fatality. But of course, then it's too late. So I think, to our point, we should be collectively investing more in the planning process and not intervening in and breaking up families after the fact.
I agree with that. I love that train of thought. I actually just had an interview not too long ago with fella Jay Rosenthal about the same kind of idea, giving that kind of oversight back to the communities itself and empowering the communities to help with their children instead of relying on outside governments or things like that to dictate how we raise our children. So yeah, I come at this kind of like Joe Rogan. I'm not a genius, but I got to live the crummier half of that lifestyle growing up. So I know what it's like living that foster care to prison pipeline. I was in that foster care. I rode that pipeline. Just decided that it wasn't a very fun ride, so we'll do things a different way and fight for people in a proper way instead. Yeah.
That was really admirable that you all are inspired by this personal experience and you took on this obligation to try to change the rules. And I think it's really wonderful. I mean, I think people might think, oh, there's this conflict between the left and they believe in this nanny state and the right and they believe in freedom and people should be free to do what they want. We have to remember that humans have this cognitive dissonance. They're really bad thinking in large slices of time. They think in really immediate terms. They don't think in long term. And so if we want people to be free, we want them to be autonomous, we have to prepare them so that they can live that way. Children don't sort of fall from the sky prepared to be autonomous. So I'm all for a libertarian lifestyle. But the difference between a libertarian lifestyle and a violent and chaotic world depends on how we invest in and prepare children. People don't just turn into adults when they're 18. It doesn't happen that way. And so I think the way to resolve some of the conflict between libertarians and liberals is to say, let's make sure the kids are getting a fair start. And you guys are doing really inspiring work, driven by your personal experiences. And I love the ride you took, and I love the media you guys are taking on. I think it comes more from the heart than our work. Our work comes more from research, and I think yours is very compelling because it does come from the heart. You can see it.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Okay. I was going to ask you about your your opinion on the foster care system and CPS as it stands now. Where do you think we could start in making changes in that kind of aspect of child welfare?
I mean, the first part is right now throughout the United States and lots of the world, we treat the act of having a child and not having a child as both protected by this idea of personal privacy or autonomy. That doesn't make any sense because creating a person is very different than not creating a person. That idea of privacy really, which was developed and created a sort of public commitment to it in the middle of the 20th century. In one way to think of it is that wealthy communities don't owe anything to communities that are not wealthy in terms of what opportunities kids in life have. This idea of having a child as a personal matter instead of an interpersonal matter. So I think when it comes to the state and child protective service agencies, they are dealing with this massive problem upstream where people are simply dumping children into the system. And they're trying to play catch up in many cases. In many cases, they're playing politics with it. I worked in the federal government. I know how it works. And so I think the first place to start is by changing the standard from parent-centric, whatever the parents want when they're choosing to have children, instead of focusing on what children need. What would children need in order to succeed? So an example of changing that norm would be right now in the United States, couples that are making up to $250,000, $300,000 a year, they're getting the same similar tax credits for every child that they have as people who are making an income near the poverty line. And I think one thing we could do is to take all tax credits for all child tax credits for people making over $100,000 a year away, and quadrupling the amount of child tax credits given to people who are making little or no money, but tying the whole system to this ethic of planning and smaller families. And so that would have a significant impact on child abuse and neglect, so that the state and CPS, they're not having to intervene in families. Families are being prepared before they're formed. They're being prepared because they're planned.
Given a greater opportunity.
Exactly.
I gotcha. Now, I was also reading on the Fair Start website about the child fatality rate as far as relation. And I noticed on there that it did state the percentage of fatality rates by parental units, but it didn't have any statistics on other relationships or combinations of male-female relationships. Do you guys at Fair Start have any grasp on those statistics? Well, not like I'm expecting you to yank them off the top of your head or anything, but
No, it's a great question. We haven't broken it down. You had asked me before, and I think right now it's about 5 children every day that die from abuse or neglect. I don't know the percentage that relates to biological parents versus non-biological caregivers, or breakdown based on those attributable to the LGBT community versus cis communities. We haven't done the breakdown in part because oftentimes if we're focused on family planning, whether it's biological or step caregiver, the problem still began in the planning stage. I think, to your point, if some of the statistics or some of the percentage is attributable in adopting families and in foster care. And I wouldn't attribute that to family planning. I mean, the parent who ended up having a child that goes into foster care or gives their child up for adoption is not responsible for the abuse and neglect, fatal abuse and neglect. Sometimes we're looking at 5 children a day that goes on. I think you could still attribute some of it to planning in that the parent would say, well, it wasn't the ideal parent-child relationship if my child ended up in foster care, or if I had to give my child up for adoption. So there's still a planning element to it, but I wouldn't blame the parents for what happened. So I think to your point, planning doesn't account for all of it, because some of it's inflicted by people that had no role in the planning process. So it's a great, I think you might imply that that's probably true. I don't know what the breakdown is. That's something we should find out.
you want me to blow your mind?
I would love that. I would love this.
It's 5 a day just here in Florida.
Not surprised. Yeah, I mean, I know Florida, other states have higher rates.
Yes, they do. Florida was all that I got to today.
Yeah.
I actually have the statistics for mothers versus fathers. Mothers is actually 29.2% versus fathers at 14.2% involved in child fatalities.
Wow.
And that's alone.
And since you asked, I'm cheating a little bit too, because now that I'm getting curious. So I thought, when you said Florida, I thought, wow, that does blow my mind. But there was a study, and I'm looking at childhelp.org. They have a page on statistics. There are many studies that indicate significant undercounting of child maltreatment-based fatalities. Yeah, so they're saying 50% or more. So your number probably accounts for the undercounting in other studies.
I dig. I dig pretty deep.
Yeah, exactly.
In my research, I did notice that, believe it or not, Pacific Islanders are the ones that take care of their children the best, that plan for their families the best, that have the smallest families, and are more in tune with their surroundings than any other race of people.
Child Protective Services investigations are among the most frightening experiences a parent can endure. With CPS Protect's consulting services, you can now face them with confidence. Our consultations can prepare you for a CPS investigation before they arrive at your door. Or, if you're already under investigation, we can help you navigate it successfully. Our consultants are all experienced former CPS investigators. The services we offer are unique. There is no one else doing what we do to help you preserve your rights and protect your family. Contact us today. Visit our website at cpsprotect.com or give us a call at 844-633-KIDS. That's 844-633-5437. CPS Protects Consulting Services, saving children, preserving families.
It's interesting. Yeah, I'm not. Yeah, I definitely have seen kinship cultures do a lot better job at caregiving. I think one of the myths is that wealthy white families in the United States are sort of immune from all of this, but probably a fair amount of the undercounting has to do with disproportionate impact that wealthy parents would have on the criminal justice system. Better opportunities to mask these sorts of things. They don't have the same level of police oversight that some disadvantaged communities do. So yeah, I'm not. When we say fair start, we say if it takes a village to raise a child, it takes a village to plan for one. That's an ode to kinship communities that are more inclined to allow shared parenting in terms of letting lots of people participate in providing resources, care, and time. And that means more eyes on the situation, and it can involve more forms of collective planning. We saw that. I've seen that in interventions throughout the last 20, 30 years of the 20th century, when you saw simply interventions that provided access to communities around the world. Like, they didn't have technological access to contraceptions or to other forms. When given those, the change in planning went quickly towards smaller families and lots of preparation. Given the resources that they had, they really wanted the best for the children that they were planning for. So I guess I didn't know what you pointed out, but I guess I'm not too surprised.
I didn't think you would be. The Pacific Islander percentage, it just kind of sparked my interest because of the fact that I do believe that it does take a village to prepare and raise for children. I spent some time among indigenous peoples, and the bond that I saw in those tribes, it was unlike anything that you would see stateside. And the worst part of it is, as far as statistically speaking, as far as that child fatality goes, well, us white people are at the top of the list, which is really surprising sometimes when you think about it. Other times, you look at the lower income population where I came from, and it's women having 7 or 8 kids and living on welfare and not really paying attention to what's happening around them and their children. And this is where I feel like, as I was talking about earlier, the education before birth idea. How do we go about cutting down on that kind of pregnancy, that kind of breeding? They are literally having babies for a check. I've heard it come out of their mouths. Might have me another baby. I can give me a bigger check. Not that I'm focusing on Southern folks. Sorry. Where I hear this is downtown Bremerton in Washington State. So, yeah.
I think, yeah.
No, I'm still asking how do we go about solving this issue where they are having kids just for a check?
Yeah. Well, yeah, and I mean, so before I answer that, I wanted to just also say to your point about the abuse statistics and how that impacts people's prospects later in life. We just published a piece looking at a study in the Lancet that showed that the vast majority of persons who are experiencing long-term or permanent homelessness, unhoused persons, the majority of them had suffered some form of adverse childhood experience. So even beyond the foster prison pipeline, yeah, I think one thing that we know is that resilience, your ability to bounce back from adverse consequences, is really crucial. We think of people as wanting to succeed and have these great abilities to strive, but oftentimes it's just being able to withstand difficulties like getting fired or going through divorce. People that have had adverse childhood experiences, oftentimes it triggers in them some catastrophic reaction, so they can't recover, and so we know that adverse childhood experiences contribute to that. So it's not just crime. It's simply people that can't really care for themselves enough to obtain housing. But to your to answer your question again, if from the New York Times to the Washington Post to the LA Times, every major paper, left and right, Washington Examiner, the publications put out by the right Fox News, everybody reacted to this idea of falling fertility rates the same way. They all reacted with horror that women were having fewer children because they called it a baby bust. We weren't producing enough consumers, enough cheap labor, and enough taxpayers to grow. So if you're talking about an impoverished woman in rural Washington State, she's doing what is asked of her because the goal is essentially to create return on investments, not because you're producing value, not because you have people in the economy that are creating wonderful things. You're just adding people. So you get return on the investments from Wall Street, no matter what, if you add people. So I look at her not as a perpetrator, but as somebody stuck in a system of growth. And if the solution for the state for her children, her impoverished children, is to just give them handout money to keep them barely floating above some minimal poverty line, they're just playing into those hands. The alternative is you create an ethic of smaller families. Universally saying that we prefer an ethic of smaller, sustainable families. Why small families? Because parents only have so much time. They can only make so much money. They can only give so much attention to each child. So smaller families are natural in that sense for caregiving. And if you had that ethic, I think that it would pull victims like the woman you're referring to kind of out of that structure. Who's benefiting from the system that you're talking about, and who's losing? And I think changing by taking the wealth from the top and incentivizing her to plan, to wait, and men too, incentivizing men to plan and to wait with financial incentives. And we published a piece with Loyola University in Chicago that showed just how effective incentives are. I think that would change the culture, the system that you're talking about, which is meant to benefit very few at the cost of many.
Right. Just wanted to get your viewpoint on that. I really dig your opinion, and I really appreciate you coming by and talking with us.
I'm honored. Really honored. You're always doing such great work.
Thank you. And you guys as well. We don't want to take up too much more of your time. We know you only had about half an hour.
No problem. I just having taught. My sister and I both taught at universities, and what we realize is we end up boring the hell out of everyone we're ever around because we're just sort of used to lecturing. So I try to limit. I usually try to limit because I feel like I just go on and on and on. But you asked really great questions, and I'm really honored that you would have me on, and I really love what you all are doing. And if there's any way that Fair Start can support, we'd like to. I know we have legislation that we both like to pursue that would overhaul the system, and hopefully, the problem is that the people that we're seeking the funding from are the ones who are benefiting from unsustainable growth. But if we can eventually get it, especially in light of the ecological situation, I'm hoping we can work together.
Right, that'd be fantastic. Me as well. All right. Well, don't think when you're talking to me that you're boring anybody, because a lot of the reason I do this is for my own learning. I'm learning as I go from everybody that I interview. And that was one of my dad's favorite things, was spend every day making sure that you learn something. So I've spent my whole life living by that, and I don't plan on stopping now. Oh, we lost sound.
His mic's off.
Your mic's off.
I just, very few people would react. Very few people would react to something like the death of a child by a parent by getting on their bike and planning to ride across country with their son. I think it's really inspiring, and I'm honored you would have me on. I find that to be really touching, and I just hope more people can follow your good example.
That's what we're going for. We're hoping. We're planning on another ride at some point. Once we can get a team to go with us, and have that chase car or whatever it is they do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I
think that'd be great. Well, I'll look forward to that day.
Us as well. I can't wait. we had a lot of fun on that trip. All right, Carter, I'll let you go. Thanks again for stopping in.
Thanks for having me on, and best to you and to Lestat, and I hope we chat again soon.
Yeah, definitely. Keep in touch. Have a good.
Lately, USA is getting scarier. Half of the Americans I see all hate America. They hate the cops doing their best to take care of us and kneel for the flag and salt the soldiers that we're burying. I'm tired of the pissing and complaining. Why you living in America if all you do is hate it? You think it's brave to take a stand against the nation? Real bravery is dying for the right so you can say it. Dear America, what happened to Americans? Apparently no one's aware or cares that it's embarrassing. It's arrogance. Our greatest enemy was always slavery and terrorists, and now it's people in the country trying to burn the heritage. I can't help it, I just seem to see the world different. It ain't Republicans or liberals, it's mental illness. The internet is only interested in left opinions. Cancel culture's got more power lately than the First Amendment. If you don't like it, leave. We will not defund police. We don't want no riots in our neighborhoods or in the streets. We respect freedom of speech. We protect what we believe. We don't want nobody dead, so please do not tread on me. In America, your freedom ain't free. In America, got soldiers dying overseas. So America, you say what we believe. My America, I won't ever take a knee. Our freedom is the reason you can disrespect our flag. If my stars and stripes offend you, then I'll help you pack your bags. America. Does anybody know what the hell happened to the patriots? Lately this nation is so ashamed and hating itself. Did everyone forget that people died to pay for this? Ungratefulness, United States gave everything to you just to help. I just want to celebrate Thanksgiving with my family. I don't need your help to understand it was a tragedy. Can I just be thankful for my country eating happily without you trying to guilt me for the genocide and casualties? I can't help it, I just seem to see the world different. It ain't black or white, it's conflict designed by the system. I don't need your pronouns, all I see is men and women. Kids are taking pills for fun while people can't afford prescriptions. If you don't like it, go. Hate it, then don't call it home. We don't need no violence, got no time for all you radicals. Screw your status quo, we're not animals. I won't kneel for the anthem, cause the flag is what I'm standing for. In America, your freedom ain't free. In America, overseas, so America.